You know, Elk 101 is just, it's its own beast, and it just keeps rolling down the hill. I'm just trying to hold on to it.
And I can remember I was on this rocky ridge, and all of a sudden right there in front of me, a desert ram appeared. I'd really never seen one before. And just as soon as it appeared and stared me down, it turned, and then just a flash of the eye and a little bit of dust, it was gone. But I was so intrigued by where those animals lived that started me on a journey that definitely has changed my life.
You know, we often hear from everybody, and I heard growing up as a kid, you know, oh, Weatherby, I've always wanted to own a Weatherby.
We sat around the campfire right there at the kill site, and we probably sat there for, I don't know, hours, recounting the experience, loving it, living it over and over again, and just really taking in the moment. And so to me, you know, that's one. And then, you know, I've had other deer that I've hunted for a couple of years, and you finally put your hands on them, and there's something to be said for that too. But I really enjoyed that experience and being able to experience that together. It's about who you're hunting with too at times. It's not just about the animal.
That was one of those nights that I remember we even said it. We're like, will this ever happen again?
Welcome to the RNA Outdoors podcast, fueled by Ripcord Arrow Rest and First Light Hunting Apparel. At RNA, we are public land DIY conservationists that love to share our passion for the outdoors. So join us and our team as we interview professionals in the industry to share insight knowledge that helps make hunters and anglers more successful. Hey listeners, subscribers, and fellow outdoorsmen and women. This is your host, Lucas Paw, and I'm excited to tell you about some of the sponsors that continue to help make this podcast not only happen, but grow and thrive in this digital world of audio content. This podcast is brought to you by Ripcord Arrow Rest, the bow hunter's #1 fall-away rest on the market. Ripcord is known for 100% full-time arrow containment and their patented drop-dead brake system that eliminates launcher bounce back. Best of all, Ripcord is backed by their rock-solid guarantee. If the original owner has a part break for any reason, it will be repaired or replaced at no charge. And did I mention? Ripcord is located in southwest Montana, where all their products are made with pride in America. Check them out at ripcordarrowrest.com and on their social media feeds. This podcast is brought to you by First Light Clothing and Hunting Apparel. Born in the Rockies in central Idaho, First Light's mission is to create simple, yet proven, versatile gear that provides comfort and performance in any situation while working to promote the pursuit of ethical hunting and stewardship. I recently joined the First Light Pro Staff team and have continued to be impressed year after year in their innovations in engineering of merino wool fabrics. 10 years ago, they started putting out wool fabrics with camo patterns, and immediately this changed the game. Since then, they offer multiple layering systems and kits in various proprietary patterns and continue to raise the bar with their competition. Find them online at firstlight.com or under their social media feeds. Go farther, stay longer.
Get her done.
There you go.
Bam, 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 bam.
Well,
2018, big boy, coming to a wrap here in the Big Paw Mansion.
Crazy, man. 2018 is basically almost done. I mean, where did the year go?
You're asking me. The problem is now we have to wait almost another half year before we do something, unless we go crazy and
I know. I hear you.
And do something out of character. Maybe it's in character with permission. Hopefully.
True. Yeah. Well.
What do you want to do, man? I'm here. I'm yours. Let's wrap this whole thing up. Recapping hunting season year to date.
Correct. 2018.
2018.
And I'm looking at this list, and it's rather long because we did a lot of hunting this year.
See, I thought the list looked short. We need a couple more trips on here.
Well, we do, but notice a couple of them were combined trips, things that you and I did together. We went to Africa together. We'll talk a little bit about that. You shot a pretty nice bull in Nevada, so I'd be anxious to hear a little bit about that. And obviously Wyatt had some good deer hunts this year too, and he took Amber out deer hunting. So yeah, it was definitely no shortage of getting out and chasing some animals and enjoying God's country, right?
Yeah, you know what was interesting is it all started off earlier this year with us kind of doing quite a few shows and goofing off that direction.
Yep.
You know?
Yeah, so you and I hit up Western Hunting Expo together. That's kind of one of our road trips we do.
Yeah.
And of course, you do NRA convention. And then I did Sheep Show and the BHA Rendezvous this year. So
was it just last year that we did Dallas Safari Club?
We did Dallas Safari, too. That was the first weekend in January. That's right.
Actually, my friend Kim called me and said, hey, you should come back. Anyway, another story altogether.
Yeah.
Well, after all those shows, then it was whacking and stacking time. You kicked it off with turkey season, but it was kind of rough on you, wasn't it?
It was. So I did. I started out in turkey season, and I was chasing birds like crazy. I had a mutual friend of mine who's been on the podcast, John Spazzano. He's a kind of a relatively new archer, and I was taking him out trying to get him a bird, and it was the first day of the season on public land. We had him within 15 yards of a very mature tom, and he just didn't know what to do. I was sitting there videoing this bird going all the way around my decoys, and John's sitting there behind this chaparral bush, and he didn't know what turkeys did. He didn't know when they fan out, when they strut, like where to shoot, and that bird ran off. I called him back again and had him within like 8 yards, and he never shot. And I'm just sitting there like looking at him like, please just shoot this thing. And
well, I found that interesting. But as you mentioned, he's a first-time hunter. And that's actually half of the joy of all this stuff.
Yeah.
Is when you take somebody that's never done it and the exhilaration you get as a mentor.
Exactly.
And once again, everybody out there listening, please, 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 I don't care if it's a kid or if it's a 70-year-old guy. Take somebody hunting with you.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, grow our sport.
Yeah.
People just really don't realize it. I mean, I took a friend of mine to Africa this year, and man, Bob had only been on one other hunt prior to this where he'd killed something, and that was with me in Wyoming. Now he's going to Africa. Now what's he talking about?
When are we going to Africa?
When are we going to Africa again?
I know. Him and Kellner both. I don't know that we ever get them shut up on going back to Africa. But
well, that's awesome.
Anyway, so turkey ended up good on the second to last day. I ended up connecting on a good bird, and just happened to be, right timing, and I got into a flock of birds, and there was a lot of jakes and hens in the group, and I was able to pick off the one mature tom at like 38 yards and sunk an arrow in him, and he piled up right there. So turkey season for me is always fun because I attribute turkey hunting a lot like elk hunting, although, obviously the animal is clearly not, the size of an elk, but when you hunt turkeys in the spring, there's a lot of similarities, right? You hear a turkey gobble, it's like an elk bugling, right? Then you get in close, you start like you would cow call, but you start making hen sounds. Next thing you know, you got this big bird coming in. So it's, they call them the feathered elk for a reason because their tendencies are a lot like hunting elk. And there's just a lot of, I mean, I took you out a few years ago, and you kind of got a little bit of a bug too, because you're walking and you hear, oh, I heard that. Oh, there's a gobble, right? So, it's a little addicting,
and that's half the fun, I mean, it's nothing like the quarry and the chase and getting down with trying to outsmart an animal.
Yeah,
man, I was amazed though that turkeys, their eyesight is just off the chart. You twitch and they got you, but
that's the thing. They can't smell you, they can hear you okay, but man, their eyesight is unbelievable. So.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, so turkey season was good, and then, we roll into pig hunting season. Brad, he's always, whacking and stacking pigs, and we were chasing, a lot of pigs at his place, and I was fortunate to actually go out. It's funny, I went out with a group of guys. He had 2 clients. He was trying to get archers, and they basically, went to the backside of this place. So I just kind of went off and did my own thing. Next thing I know, I got this group of pigs coming at me, just running by and stopping in front of me, running. So I saw this good calico-based pig that came out at I think it was 50 some yards, and stopped and just started feeding, and smacked it. I was just like, so these guys,
right place at the right time.
Yeah,
is what
it was
that's
so
called.
funny because I smacked that thing, ran up, died. I could hear it. I could hear it go into the trees and crash. Went and got my arrow, and of course I got blood on my fingers. I was like, oh, okay. So Brad and all them, and there's no cell service back where we were. So I get back up on the hill, and I see Brad down at the picnic table range where he was waiting, and so I'm waving up there, and I finally got I was able to call. So I called Brad, and I'm like, hey, you should come back here. There's still some pigs back here. He's like, oh, okay. So he grabs the 2 hunters, and they come up that hill, and we're talking. He's like, well, where are they at? And I just put my hand out, and I had blood on my hand, and he's like, no, you didn't. And then I showed him the quiver. I showed him the arrow on my quiver, and he's like, you're kidding me. And we went in and retrieved the pig. So, yeah. So, spring pig hunting, as here on the coast is just, it's a heck of a lot of fun when the alfalfa starts growing and the barley heads out, and it's game time. And then when it gets cut, it's like you got water, you got feed. It's ripe for pig opportunity here on the coast.
And that's such an awesome experience for anybody that wants to just get out. It's a great time of year because there's not a whole lot of things going on. So, people that want to just get out and, like yourself and fling a couple arrows and just get into the groove. But rifle hunters, holy cow, you probably could have shot 6 or 7 pigs in that one little thing if you'd have wanted to.
Totally.
It's awesome when you got a great place to do that.
Yeah. And you've obviously taken the kids, and last year, we got Wyatt's pig, and, Amber shot the pig a couple years ago. It's a good animal it's pretty inexpensive. Depending on the time of the year and access, it's a great animal to practice on, right? And the meat is actually really good.
Oh, man, those last 2 pigs that the kids killed, both of them were feeding in barley fields. So, they were phenomenal. In fact, actually, I think I only have 1 package left from those 2 pigs. Amazingly enough, we ate pretty much every lick of those 2 pigs.
Yeah.
And it was marvelous.
Yeah.
Marvelous meat.
Yeah. So, in the spring and early summer, they're just eating all that good feed. So they're fattening up, and they are pretty good eating. So I'm looking forward to spring this year. I'm hopeful for a wet year, right? I think we all are hopeful for a wet year, but the more rain we get, obviously, the better feed, which transforms into a lot of good things, not only for our pigs and turkeys, but our deer and our elk and all the other species. That's really mission critical that we have good feed. So
let's pray that the moisture that we've been getting keeps coming. Every couple of weeks we get another charge, and it helps grow the feed, because we could sure use another moisture year. We had that one 3 years ago, and that provided some great forage, but then we kind of dropped off the last couple of years again.
Yeah.
So we really need that. Our horn growth and just the wildlife in general need as much moisture as we can possibly get it. And so far this year, it's looking pretty good. Yeah. But time will tell, because we've been in this position before where it's hit us pretty good early on, and then it dwindles to nothing, and then everything pops up, and we get 6 inches of grass, and then it all dies.
Well, and to your point, it's the steady, continuous, right? It's not the dump an inch in an hour and then it all runs to the river. It's like small, steady, light. That's the best rain that you can get, right?
Absolutely.
So,
well, and then summer rolls around. July in Africa, people. If you've never been, it's time for you to take the chance and go out and do it.
It's pretty funny because you were on the fence up until like what? When did you buy your plane ticket?
5 weeks before we left.
I'm like, is Jason going to go? Alex is emailing me, hey, you got to talk Jason into going. Is he going to go? I'm like, I don't know. I'm trying to get him to go. And then I'm driving to work one morning and just like bored out of my mind. And I thought, well, let me just check and see if there's any flights. So I get to work and I checked the flights. And immediately when I got to work, I saw the flight for Delta on Expedia. I'm like, it's under $1,000. I'm like, okay, I paid like $1,400 to fly. So,
which was a good price.
So I called Jason or maybe texted him or something. It was pretty early. I'm like, dude, there's flights for Delta. Like, you want to go Delta out of Atlanta? I'm like, it's like under $1,000. So it worked out. And you made it happen.
It was phenomenal. I mean, when you contacted me, I was already on the fence, but at the same time, I wanted to go. And I still remember going in and telling Candy, I was like, hey, so Lucas just sent me a note and flights are $1,000. And the last time I had went, I paid $2,000 a person. And so my wife looked at me and goes, well, you know what that means? I'm thinking, oh, no, what's that mean? She's like, you have to take your son with you. Since it's half price, you got to take him too.
Boy, it's got to go.
So lo and behold, me and the boy booked a flight that day, and next thing you know, we're all checking off the list, you know, trying to get our packing list all together. Did you ever post your packing list that you put out on your site or anything?
No, you know, so after the fact, you know, I did write a story in a blog for the website, and I've submitted that to Africa Hunting Gazette. So I did put in there a lot of my equipment and my gear that I use for the hunt. I didn't so much pack a list. I do have a list that I used when I packed to check off, right, and things that just to make sure I didn't forget. But the thing about Africa is it's not like you're going to Colorado and spending 10 days in the backcountry where survival gear, a good pack, tent, sleeping bag, sleeping pad are essential. Yeah. You're going to Africa. You really need the base minimal stuff to do that, right?
Well, let's talk about that base minimal stuff. Okay, so Africa is awesome. Oh yes, it is a guided hunt, but basically it's all out of a lodge. Yeah. So really, every day you're sleeping in a nice warm room, dry, comfortable. You know, you've got running water, you've got bathrooms, you've got a common area with a full stocked fridge of anything that you might possibly need and then some. And of course, you know, coffee, tea, and everything else in between. So for those people that have never experienced that, I mean, I think it was pretty cool for us because we had a really great group, and we've talked about that before.
Yeah, we did.
Derek and Meredith and Bob and Dave.
Brandon.
And you and I and Wyatt. I mean, geez, Alex and his brother Johnny put on a top-notch group. Eland Safaris. We had a fantastic hunt. I mean, in fact, I think we even surprised them in regards to the number of animals that we ended up shooting. Because you fell off the wagon. It's okay, man. It's okay.
Yeah, well, when I realized that Cape Buffalo was not a reality, that's when I realized I had a little more, money to play with. And I think 48 for 8 animals, or 48 for 8 hunters is I think what we landed.
Yeah, so we had a fantastic time. And, a funny thing is for me, I mean, I've been quite a few times, and it's just I'm the odd guy. I'm the one shooting the weird stuff. Yeah. But then I turn around and friggin' Bob and Meredith both shoot black Impalas. I'm like, wait a second, that was on my list, and I never got one.
You haven't shot one of those yet.
Yeah. So, but I did. I was very fortunate to get my Sesame, which is something that I've hunted a couple different times, and I was very fortunate to actually shoot that golden wildebeest. Yeah. So with your bow too. Yeah, and then doing the night hunt, that was an absolute wild experience. And I mean
you got to do it with Wyatt first, right? And
then when you decided to do it, and we ran out there, you'll have to post your night shot.
Yeah, the video.
The video that was pretty incredible.
We had a great
time. And I apologize for my language, people. It was all in fun. It was just exciting.
I probably should bleep that out, but Jason was pretty over the moon when he realized I actually hit this animal at like 40 yards.
In the dark.
When we talk about a steam buck, this is a fully sized ram that weighs 12 pounds?
I don't know.
8 pounds?
I think it might have been pushing 19. I mean, it was a big one, dude.
Yeah.
It was a serious big one.
So they're just tiny. They're a tiny antelope species, the common steenbuck. But, you know, the rams just have those two little, you know, basically pointed little horns, little spikes. But
that was an awesome shot.
That was a lot of fun.
In the dark. I mean,
you're ranging for me. You're like, okay, 41, 39.
I was trying 41. To do my job.
Right when you said 39 is when I released, then you can just hear that whap.
Man, and that's the amazing thing in the video where you actually heard the thump. I mean, I was looking through the rangefinder, so I mean, I was on it, and I literally saw the arrow hit it.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I was floored. That was incredible. Incredible shot.
It was fun.
And
the
incredible
funny thing
trip.
about that day was the fact that I shot my baboon that morning, and Alex told me, he's like, you know, we've had archery hunters hunt baboons. We've never had anyone take one with a bow. I'm like, okay. So, you know, you went to that blind. You know what the scenario was there. There's not a lot of shooting space.
Shooting space for a bow.
So I end up smacking this baboon with my bow and just kind of like was
surreal.
reeling on. Yeah, it was pretty surreal. And then I go and I do this steenbuck hunt. It was either dick or steenbuck. And, you know, Alex again and Petrie both are like, yeah, we really don't have people do archery hunting. I mean, the truck's moving and you're standing in the back trying to shoot the damn thing with your bow. And here I go smack this thing with my bow. It was just like, it was one of those days. It was like, man, everything's just kind of like feeling really good, you know, like my bow's shooting good. I felt good. It was just, I don't know. It was one of those
aligned.
Days, right?
It was definitely aligned. You were in the zone and you put it all together and made it happen, which, you know, those things don't always happen, right? And that's the beautiful part about it. That's the beautiful part about it. You know, for anybody that's interested, you know, contact Lucas or I, and we'll get you set up to go to Africa, because let me tell you, it is way fun. And, you know, bang for your buck.
The hunting was phenomenal, but to me, it was the nights when everyone came back. It was the fellowship. It was, you know, standing around the fire, you know, having a sundowner, watching them cook, you know, whatever you'd harvested a couple days before, and then the meals. I mean, the meals were just phenomenal there. I mean, everything about that African experience is like everything you would ever want it to be if you were to go there, right?
Well, one of the first meals that we had was zebra.
Yeah. Oh.
And it was phenomenal.
I don't think I've ever had better meat than zebra. And you were crazy about eland, right?
I'm an eland
you're like,
junkie.
you got to have eland. And so we had eland, and the eland was good. But the zebra was, I mean, it was so good. And I've told people that. I'm like, yeah, we had zebra, and it was the best thing I ate there.
And the funny part is, you know, I mean, we shot the eland basically almost at the end of the hunt.
Yeah.
So it did not have any time to age properly, but still it was awesome. And then we ate kudu.
Yeah.
I mean, the kudu was
Good.
marvelous. The blue wildebeest was really good.
Yeah.
Oh, man, it was...
No shortage of excellent food.
Dude, we ate and ate. I freaking gained 6 pounds on that trip.
Funny thing is I gained 1 pound on that trip. And all we
you
did
don't
was
ever gain any weight doing anything.
I know. I do. I definitely didn't gain any weight when I was on Kodiak. But I don't want to get there yet because we had a whole summer. So we're kind of walking through 2018. Springtime, pig hunting, turkey. We threw in Africa this year, which was just kind of something that happened and was an awesome trip. But the beauty for us in California is our hunting really starts for deer in July, and it's the second weekend in July.
Now, wait a second. Now, you say the beauty. That could also be considered it's really crappy too.
Well,
but that's good for us because we like to explore other states,
that's
and
true.
So being able to hunt early in July is great.
It's good.
Let me tell you, you and I also hunted in 100 and what degree weather?
Yeah.
And let me tell you, that was miserable.
No, it's miserable, but
miserable when the deer come out like with like 2 or 5 minutes left in the evening, and you're like, oh my God, there's one.
Yeah. But that's
California.
That's blacktail hunting for us, right? So A-Zone opens the second weekend in July. So we're out there with our bows in July here on the coast where it could be 80 degrees on a Saturday night or it could be 105 degrees, right?
Wait a second. We landed back here, and it wasn't just a couple days later, and you went out, right?
Yep.
For the first time.
So the first time, yeah. So, and I had been watching bucks and trail camming bucks a lot of the summer. And
until that little kitty showed up.
Yeah, until the kitty showed up. And then funny thing was Justin Dowling, who we've had on this podcast, ended up shooting one of the bucks that I had on my game camera. Funny thing was he shot the buck. He sends me a picture of it. I'm looking at it. It's fork and horn. So I go back and I go through my pictures on my phone and I email or I texted him the picture. I said, "Here's your buck." So yeah. So summer blacktail. If I could sum up summer blacktail hunting, I chased basically one buck all summer. And I ended up getting an arrow in that buck like a few weeks before the season ended. And actually, I got 2 arrows in that buck, and I never did recover that deer. And for the life of me, I don't know. And I think I showed you the pictures of like the blood pile that I had. And I hit him. He hunched up and he stood there. I knocked another arrow, hit him again, almost in the same identical place. He runs off. He burns around, and I see the dust flying. So I just say, you know what? I'm just going to give him some time. So I gave him 30 minutes, and it was getting dark. So I'm like, well, I can't give him a whole lot more time. I walk over there. He stands up from his bed and runs off. And when I go look at his bed, I just see this pool of blood, and it's foamy, and it's like lung blood, right? But it wasn't like obviously double lung blood, or he'd have been keeled over. He got up and ran, gone, and didn't recover him that night. Came back the next day. A buddy of mine came with me. We went looking for him, found very little blood, and just...
That's archery hunting, though, dude. I mean, it's painful.
It is.
Don't get me wrong. I mean, I never like to. I mean, hitting an animal is one thing, but never recovering them is very hard. But you also never know. Did he, die right there somewhere, and he ended up in a pile, or as we've heard so many different times, did he run over onto the neighboring property and the neighbor drive by and go, "Hey, dead deer, pretty nice one.
Yep.
I'll put my tag on him, throw him in the back of the truck, and take off with him."
Exactly.
Because I don't know how many stories we heard this year of people losing animals to other people tagging them and taking them.
Yeah.
This is a weird year, man.
Yeah. And even the next morning, there was 2 or 3 coyotes just yipping like crazy in that same canyon, and I'm thinking he's in here somewhere, and just never did turn him up. But it was bittersweet because I was watching this buck like it was like a summer thing. It's like spring. You start to see him grow, and I'm like, well, wow, he's okay. He's a 3-point, and then you start following this deer, and you actually kind of get attached to it, right?
Yeah.
And here I am. I have this opportunity, and I stalked in on this deer, and it was about a 50-yard shot, and just hit him. I thought I hit him really good. I just think I hit him a little bit high. And he just stood there, and he hunched up, and he just kind of stood there. And then I knocked another arrow, and I smacked him again, almost, I thought, in the exact same place. And he ran off with one arrow, and I was able to recover the other arrow. And, yeah.
Well, those things happen. And for those out there that have never wounded an animal,
that's archery hunting,
It's a gut-wrenching experience, but it will happen to you sooner or later.
Yeah.
And, I'm testament to that, too.
Yeah.
So... How'd rifle go for you then?
Didn't even go. Actually, I think I did. I went out a few times with my bow. I didn't even rifle hunt. And, by that time, the reason I like hunting these deer early is because they're in velvet, and they're obviously, you can stalk in on them and you can get close. But when they start getting shot at and they drop that velvet and they get hard antlered, they turn into a different animal. And they're very nomadic. They go nocturnal. Right, like you were saying, it's 5 minutes left to shoot, and here comes the bucks. And that's what happens in rifle season. And most of the places that we hunt that are public lands, it's just so tough because there's so many people and so many hunters that, you go out there with your bow. It's like, what are you even doing when you got a bunch of guys shooting, any legal spike by fork that's out there. And that's
well, and my goal this year was to take my daughter and get my daughter a buck, and oh my gosh, I think I calculated out 16 half days of hunting for blacktail bucks. And I saw one legal buck, and it was at like 1,100 yards. And by the time we closed the distance to get in there, it was dark. So it was a painful hunting season. And, my daughter, of course, is used to being able to just go out and shoot the biggest thing on the friggin' hill and this is no big deal. And it was pretty
big bull elk, 6-point, boom, wow.
Yeah, it was pretty humbling.
Yeah.
And of course I took her most of the times, but then some of the times I took my boy with too. And, you know, we basically set up game plans and we knew exactly the area we were going. And for the first time, I kind of let him wander off on his own. And he was all exhilarated about, you know, that responsibility.
Yeah.
But Lord have mercy. I mean, we pounded it. I mean, we literally pounded it 16 half days and we saw one legal buck during shooting light hours. And it was that evening, and it was literally, you know, 1,100 yards away. And I was like, okay, I know right where it's at. I know right how to get to it. But it came out, you know, 20, 30 minutes of light left. We were clean on another top of a ridge. We cut the distance to 200-300 yards, but then he went into some oak patch and that was it. And that was it.
Yeah.
So it was a humbling blacktail A-zone season.
Sure.
This year.
It was, you know, but still, I mean, it's nice to have that season because it kind of preps you and gets you ready for September.
Oh man.
Which I think I'm going to tee you up and let you talk a little bit about basically probably the once in a lifetime tag you'll draw, you know, in Nevada.
So after 19 years of applying, and I didn't think I'd draw it this early, I drew a area 111 to 115. Excuse me, 111 to 113, 115.
15, yeah.
One of those things.
11
anyway,
to 15, yeah.
Elk hunt. So it was a premium trophy elk hunt. The cool part is you get to hunt the biggest elk on earth.
Yeah.
The crappy part is bad moisture year this year and not as good of horn growth as we would have liked. But regardless, there was only 35 hunters out in the field at the same time hunting elk, and I was one of them. So
in a lot of, I mean, when you combine those 5 units, there's a lot.
It's monstrous.
There's a lot of property there.
It's monstrous.
And it's mostly public land, right?
Yeah, I mean, almost all of it's public land. And really, like I said, there's not that many people. Well, I went for the couple days of opener and kind of explored a little bit, but never really put a lot of effort into the early season because they open up really early. They run, if I remember right, it was like the 22nd of August through like, say, September 15, 16. And for me, I was hoping that maybe there would be some bulls in the velvet still. But when I showed up, basically all the elk had already rubbed off. But they were definitely no chasing elk going on. So my hopes was that I would go back home and come back the last 10 or 12 days of the season and potentially get into some rutting action, which in the end, the reality was there was really no rutting action that happened before the end of the season. But the positive thing is the bulls were out there and they were talking a little bit.
Yeah.
So usually locating them wasn't a difficult situation.
Yeah.
But stalking a elk by himself in wide open sagebrush country, that is a real challenge.
Yeah.
And so ended up really after hunting for quite a few days, figuring out that the only way that I was going to be successful and kill a good bull in Nevada was to sit water. And let me tell you, people, sitting water is what I did, and it was excruciatingly painful. For those whitetail hunters out there that sit in a stand 24/7 all the time, hats off to you. I mean, maybe being ADHD and having all kinds of other symptoms of can't sit still is why I can't do it, but it was rough. It was rough. I mean, I literally would get into the blind sometimes at 10 in the morning and stay until dark. And as we know, it doesn't get dark until really late in September. But in the end, it paid off, you know. I mean, I killed an absolute beautiful 5x6 bull.
Yeah, you did.
I mean, I keep wishing he had the 6 point, and I keep wishing he was a little wider, and I keep wishing that I would have killed the bull that I saw from 3 miles away that was like the monarch bull that you dream about. But, you know, we spent 3 days looking for that damn thing and never saw him again.
Never turned him up, yeah.
So You know, the downside is now I'm in a 5 or a 7 year moratorium where I can't even build a point in that state for elk. And so the reality is that I'll probably never hunt elk in the state of Nevada again. But
unless you move there, maybe, then you might, But even as a resident,
most of the residents that I know are just like they get to hunt it once or twice in their life, and then that's it.
That's it.
But it was phenomenal. I mean, hats off to Nevada for producing the elk herd that they produced.
Yep.
I mean, they
manage it very tightly. You said how many tags?
35.
Yeah.
This bull that I killed was just an absolute brute. I mean, there was another bigger bull that was there, but he was a lot younger. This bull that I killed was way heavy-horned. His thirds were off the chart.
Great thirds.
And
good overall good fronts, too.
Oh, yeah. I mean, all these points were excellent. Yeah. He's just missing one of them.
He's missing one.
But that's just the way it was. And when he walked in, there was no doubt in my mind that if he presented me a good shot that I was going to send that Ramcat to the right spot.
Yeah.
So.
And you did.
Yeah, that shot was pretty on target. I mean, I literally went in and he took one step and I think he pulled the arrow back through his heart, and he took a total of 13 steps when he fell over. I mean, he literally, I knocked another arrow and I was getting ready for a second shot because I was going to put another hole in him. And as I came to draw, he literally did the spread your legs out, wobble, wobble. And I'm thinking, is he going to? And he fell over. I was like, well, I guess he is.
I guess I don't need to put another arrow in him.
Guess I don't. So, Nevada elk hunting, people.
That's awesome.
If you're not trying, you got to put your name in the hat.
Yeah.
It's an expensive tag. I will tell you, it was painful paying that price. But man, oh man.
Nevada squares points. So, once you start building a few points, they square everything. So, your chances and your odds start to go up quite, substantially. But to draw a unit like you had, you really got to be in that 18, 19, right? I mean, you just got to be up there where
you got to be dedicated.
Yeah.
I mean, you got to look at it and go a long-term plan. That's not a state that you're going to go, oh, I'm going to draw a tag every 3-4 years.
No.
I mean, that's actually the first tag in Nevada that I've drawn. So, I mean, for me, that's
and you have lots of points built up in that state, deer points and sheep points.
I also don't apply. I don't apply for. I apply for the absolute best. That's it.
Yeah.
But usually by the time Nevada rolls around, I know. Like we've talked about in regards to strategies on drawing tags. Arizona's already come out, so a lot of years I've drawn 4 tags in Arizona for elk. So those 4 years, I was like, dude, I do not want an extra elk tag.
And then when April comes around Nevada, you're like, I already got my elk tag. I don't need another one.
So those 4 of those 19 years, I was like absolutely not going to draw a tag in Nevada on those situations.
Yeah.
And that happens. Same thing with you, Montana, New Mexico.
Yeah. So I remember being at work and pulling up New Mexico and seeing basically all reds and then one green. And I was like,
Green? What the hell is that? I've never seen that before.
And I remember calling you. I think I sent you the text first that I had drawn elk. Because when I saw the green, I'm like, okay, because I apply for sheep, I apply for ibex, I apply for aoudad, I apply for deer, and I apply for elk. I apply for 5 species in New Mexico. I'm thinking, did I draw a sheep tag? Did I draw a deer tag? I mean, what did I draw? And sure enough, I ended up drawing, the Unit 13 New Mexico elk tag. And unbeknownst to me, didn't, know much about the unit, didn't know really anything about it. And next thing I know, I look in Hunting Fool, which is when I applied for it, and realized that, it's one of the top 5 units in the state, which is probably why I applied for it, right?
Most likely.
And based on the odds, it's not 16A, 16D in the Gila, but it's in that top 5 quadrant, right, of units. And I knew I was going to hunt Montana because every year I go back and do the native non-resident program. So I can basically hunt for a little over resident rates when I go back. So I get my elk and deer tag for pennies on the dollar, essentially. So I started my trip in Montana, drove up and hunted elk. Another unfortunate story, I had a really good 6-point, and I say really good, but Montana standards, he was under 300 inches, but he was in that, just in that general vicinity area. Good solid bull, 6-point, and hit him high again, and, wounded him and never did recover that bull, and unfortunately just didn't get another crack at another animal. But what I did do is we ended up turning up 6 deer that in this area that we generally elk hunt, we see deer there, but we never see the genetics like we saw this year. We saw one buck that was a triple fork 6x7. We saw one buck that was a deep 4x4 that was I feel Judge pushed him at close to 180-inch deer.
Wow.
24, 26 wide box, deep forks, probably another 24, 25 tall, just a beautiful frame deer in velvet. And I stalked in on top of him. He was bedded in a little cut of sage. I got above him at 64 yards, and I was sitting there. I had my pin set. I had everything ready, and I was just waiting for him to stand up. And I could have got closer, and as I started working closer, I didn't realize the other bucks with him were off to my right in the sage. They pop up. So immediately I turn over and I look, and I see that triple fork buck. And I'm thinking, I mean, how many times in your life are you going to shoot a buck that's got triple forks, right?
Yeah.
So I range him, and he was at like 72. So then I go and I adjust my pin, and as I'm doing that, I turn around and I look, and he's standing up broadside, and he's looking at me. So I go back down to 61, and as I go to draw, he takes off. And had I just been, content with knowing he was going to pop up, I would have probably put an arrow in that buck. And so anyway, that was kind of bittersweet. And then the last day I was leaving, I packed up camp, elk camp, and I was leaving, and I ended up spotting these deer again. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to give it one more chance. So I went and I put a stalk in, and I think I got close to 100 yards, and they were kind of slow moving, and I couldn't get a shot on them. But Montana was fun. Got to catch up with all my buddies, but
that's the dream, though, right? I mean, we always laugh about, when you have a deer tag in your pocket, what do? You see monster bucks. When you have a buck tag in your pocket, you see monster bulls.
Yeah.
But in your case, you had both tags in your pocket, and you were able to do that. The problem that I always tell everybody is you have to focus.
You have to focus on one. It's hard.
And in my opinion, of course, I love eating elk. And I love hunting elk, but man, deer are just like that bad affliction. And I'm so more successful hunting elk than I am deer. But maybe that's the reason I like to hunt deer more.
And I'm an elk snob, but I have definitely gotten a deer bug over the last few years. There's just something about them that it's chasing those mule deer, and these are. These are early season velvet bucks. When you start talking about chasing them in November in Montana, when they're lip curling and pushing does, I mean, that's a whole other
ball game.
So then I packed up my stuff, and I headed to New Mexico. And the cool thing about the New Mexico hunt is that, Randy Newberg and I had been conversing, prior in that unit, and, he had drawn the early season tag. So he was there, and he was basically one of my best scouts. I mean, he had been hunting that unit for 10 to 12 days before I got there. And when I got there, I was fortunate to be able to go out with him and spend a couple days in camp with him. Most see Randy in a different light, right? You see him on TV, you see him at the trade shows, you see him as a keynote speaker, at the sheep show, and he's just this bigger than life, guy in our industry. And then you literally go into his camp, and he's just got a standard, he's got a nice Hilleberg tent, but he's got a lot of nice gear, but he's just a natural, normal dude, right? And I've met Randy. I'd met Randy at the shows before, and
just like the rest of us schmucks, we live out of our back of our truck,
basically,
and chase the animals that we love dearly.
Yeah. The beauty of this trip, though, is I actually brought him dilly bars, so I know he's a.
I saw that picture.
Yeah. The problem is that they had melted because New Mexico this year, unfortunately, was so hot. That the elk hunting was just really tough. So to close out Randy's hunt, I don't even think he drew his bow back in those 10, 12 days. And then I came in after that, and I had the 15th to the 24th tag. So you're thinking, okay, September 15 to 24, the bulls were starting to, Randy was saying they're just starting to snap a little bit.
Yeah. So, I mean, you literally started hunting. That was last weekend of my hunt.
Yeah.
I killed my bull I still had 35 minutes of light left.
Yeah.
Plenty of time, but you were off.
Yeah.
And now that's geographically, you were a little further south than I was.
Yeah.
So, you didn't see that much action. You saw a little bit, but you had mentioned how many times.
The crazy thing is that rut changed, and that's why I told Randy when I eventually ended up talking to him again. I said, your last day is the day that we went and set up our camp, and I had a couple buddies with me on that hunt for a few days. That night, we couldn't sleep. where we camped, because it was an area that I had scouted. I went in August for a weekend and scouted, set game cameras, and felt this is probably one of my top 3 areas that I want to spend time in. We could not sleep that whole night because of the bulls bugling within a few hundred yards of our camp. And I'm thinking that night, this is going to be awesome, right? So we get up that next morning before light. We're putting our stuff on, hearing bulls bugle. So we kind of go back to the area that I figured we would go, because the night before we scouted, we had bulls bugle and we had elk all around us. It was just crazy. Sun came up at like 6:40, and by like 7 o'clock, nothing. And it was already 70-some degrees. And that was the story of that hunt. Those bulls each day got quieter and quieter, to the point, to the second to last day I was hunting by myself. But for about 5 days, the last 5 tail end days of the season, I was solo by myself. I was getting up at 2 a.m.
That's painful.
And I was trying to get in front of them because I could hear them. I mean, from midnight to 4 a.m., they were just screaming. And when I say screaming, I mean, it was to the point where you just lay in bed and you're like, I had my earplugs in and I was still hearing them, right? So I was getting up at 2 a.m. and I was getting on the ridge and I was trying to get in front of them. And every single day, they would just shut up. And cow calls,
right as it gets light.
Cow calls were useless. Bugles were useless. It was a spot and stalk, try to get in on these elk and try to kill one.
Now, you had mentioned to me, too, that basically, unlike Montana hunting, that when you would bugle, they would just run.
They would run, literally. Yeah. It was like in Montana.
These tags are pretty precious. It's not like there's a lot of people hunting.
And the funny thing is everyone I talked to leading up to this hunt, I got a lot of information from some of the hunting resource companies. Everyone I talked to said, just leave your bugle at camp. Just
hard to believe, huh?
Listen to a bugle and try to get on them, try to spot and stalk them, if they've got cows, just try to work them and just get close. And I'm thinking, yeah, whatever. I love to bugle, right? Well, that was good advice, because every time I brought my bugle and I used it, I never had anything respond to me ever. Cow calls were depending okay, but there was a few times. I had opportunities. I could have shot many spikes. It was any elk, so I could have shot spike, cow, or mature bull. But I wasn't there to shoot a raghorn, right?
Yeah.
I was there because I had a tag that I may never draw that tag again. New Mexico is a no-point state. You just never know, right? It was a less than 5% chance draw for me as a non-resident. And I had a chance. The second to last day, I sat water, and I did. I disciplined myself, and I had a decent 5-point, and I say decent, but for the bulls that I saw come into water at 22 yards, and he was sitting there sloshing around, wallowing in the water, and I didn't shoot him, right? And the last morning, I did the 2 o'clock deal. I got up, I got in front of this bull, and it was the 5-point that my buddy Ben and I had been chasing, like the second or third day that we'd actually gotten to New Mexico. So it was pretty cool because that morning I knew it was his bugle, and I knew exactly what it was. I knew it was that bull, and he was screaming all morning. So I was able to follow him, and I kept working up, and I just basically stayed on his line until I got above him. And I knew I got above him because the wind was perfect. The wind was blowing in my face. It was coming up the ridge. Cows were starting to come by me. I'm thinking, okay, it's my last day. It's going to all come together, right? And he was a legitimate 300 plus inch 5-point. He was just a big, massive 5, right? Just kind of one of those bulls. You're like, you wish he was a 6-point, because then he would have went to the 340 range, but he was just a 5-point genetically, right?
Yeah.
But just a big bodied 5. So I could hear him bugling, and I heard the bugles getting closer. I'm thinking, okay, it's going to happen. Cows are coming, whistling by me at 30, 40 yards, and I'm just sitting there and I'm ready. And all of a sudden it just stops. The cows kind of start feeding down, and I don't hear any more bugles. So I'm like, okay, where'd he go? So I just do a light cow call, thinking, because the cows were kind of mewing a little bit. I just do this light little estrus cow call. All of a sudden it was like the whole mountain erupted. Off the mountain, down the other side, up the other side, down the other way. And I'm just sitting there and I'm shaking my head like, I have tried to call these elk. I've tried to cow call them. I've tried to bugle them. I've tried to spot and stalk them. I've tried to get in front of them every morning. And it was just like failed attempt after failed attempt. And I literally, for one time in my life, I felt defeated, right? And I looked at myself. I'm like, okay, I've been hunting this unit for 9 days now. I haven't drawn my bow back. Now, by choice, I had not drawn my bow
Yeah.
back. But I walked back to camp, and I was content. I packed up my camp, took me an hour, got everything in my truck. It was like 11 o'clock. I got in my truck, and I drove home.
Yeah, I think you called me when you were you had packed everything up and you called me.
I was just
I could tell. I mean, but that is a challenging thing for those of you that haven't hunted alone. When you go out and you have some friends, they could keep you motivated. When your friends leave, and you struggle and struggle and struggle, and I have to tell you, just like I told you before, I set water and it sucked. Absolutely excruciating sitting water.
It is.
But the reality was that when I sat water, I had opportunities.
Yeah.
And it was painful sitting water. And as I told you, I had that one big 6-point walk in 6 yards behind the frickin' blind. And I'm sitting in the blind with my bow, and I'm like, there's a cow in the marsh. I'm like, all he's got to do is commit another 5 to 8 feet. If he would have walked out another 5 to 8 feet and stuck his muzzle in the edge of the water, I could have put an arrow in him.
Yeah.
And what did he do? He smelled a rat, and he turned around and he just walked away. And I'm like, how do they do that?
I know.
But that tells you, for those people that are patient, and if you can do it, sitting in water is a secret that works. I mean, they gonna go to water. They gotta drink.
Yeah.
So I know
it was a bummer, and again, I could have harvested an elk. I was there with this envisioning thought that this is my one opportunity to shoot that 300 class inch bull, and just didn't happen. And I look back on it now, and I mean, I don't regret it because I ended up filling my Montana elk tag eventually, but I would go back and hunt that unit again in a heartbeat because I know exactly where to go. I know exactly where the elk are, and I kind of have somewhat of an idea how what their temperament was. But it was interesting when I'm reading blogs and I'm reading Facebook posts this year from outfitters in New Mexico. It was pretty resounding that this year was one of the tougher years that they've had with their elk herds. And although there were some good bulls taken this year, it was rough. It was a rough year. It was a tough year, and a lot of people didn't fill their tags.
We'll get to New Mexico deer hunting here later on, too.
Yeah.
But before we do that, man, Kodiak. Oh, man. I'm telling you, I told you.
I did a whole podcast on Kodiak, which most of you probably, I think it's 61 or 62. You'll have to check it out. But, yeah, so I got back from New Mexico, and no rest for the wicked. 3 weeks later, I was turning my gear over to plan a trip to do basically a DIY chartered trip on a boat, but Kodiak Island trip. And
a transporter trip.
Transport trip. And it wasn't outfitted, wasn't guided, transport trip. And it was through Hunt and Fool. So Austin puts that hunt together and, gets a group of 8 to 10 guys together every year and does that. And I talked to my brother about it, and I talked to another one of my buddies. I said, hey man, this is actually a pretty good deal. We can go and we can basically have a hot meal, sleep on a boat.
Your brother, I tell that guy.
I know. I bring my brother, and of course he
spoiler.
Yeah, we hunted an area of the island that's a pretty sacred area of the island, and it's that way for a reason because 9 guys shot bucks that day, and I was the only one that didn't. But
hey, listen, you've got the legs, and you had to pack the meat. I mean, somebody's got to do it.
Yep.
Damn it, why wasn't I on that hunt?
You should have been.
You invited me, I know.
Kodiak was incredible. So my brother shot basically the jackpot buck, first buck that I glassed up in that part of the island. I looking at that buck and I said, I don't think I've ever seen a 4x4, right? I mean, sick of blacktail.
Don't see
Pretty
them.
common to see. Fork and horns. 3-point is kind of like semi the holy grail, but the 4x4 is like
unheard of.
You don't see many of them. So I'm glassing this buck up and I'm seeing one side. He's got 4 points. I'm thinking, wow. So I get my spotting scope out and I start really breaking him down. And when I saw 4 on both sides, and my brother was there, I said, man, someone has to kill this deer, And I'm thinking, is it going to be me or my buddy Cody to go spot it and stalk it with a bow? Or do we need to lay this thing down with a rifle?
Lay it down.
So I took my brother and I set him up, and it was kind of nerve-wracking because we lost the buck originally. He bedded down, And there
that
was
stuff's thick.
It's so thick. And there was another 3x3 within 50 yards of him, and another guy in our group, Mike, who ended up just being a really good guy. I said, Mike, if you want this buck, take him. I don't know where that 4x4 went. So Mike gets set up, 308, wham, hammers this buck, drops down. All of a sudden, I look over to the left. What stands up?
I'm telling you, that stuff, and you talked in your podcast about climbing through that stuff, and it's only a couple thousand feet, and you're like, oh, this is chump change.
Yeah.
Takes you 3-4 hours.
5 hours later, you actually start hunting. So anyway, so then that buck stood up, and I had my brother set up. He was already proned out, and I said, 200 yards, Harley, hammer him. He jacked one in and just hammered that 4x4. So we had two bucks down right there. The funny thing is after that, another 3x3 stood up to the right of us. I looked at Cody. I said, you want it? He goes, yep. He goes out, goes on a stalk, gets into 50 yards, sticks that buck with his bow. So we're like, here, first hunt, first morning, we have 3 deer down. And I'm like, okay, I'm looking at myself like, okay, I was selfless. I wanted my brother to shoot that buck. Mike had that shot at the 3-point. I said, Cody, go do that. So then I realized, okay, there's 4 of us, there's 3 deer down. And we'd already pushed a brown bear off the mountain that morning. So I'm thinking, okay, this is going to be interesting. So
this is not your typical California blacktail hunt, folks. This is like, you could buy 3 tags. Did I mention it? 3 tags.
Exactly. So we're all breaking these deer down. And, by the way, Kodiak Island is kind of known for that, that Kodiak brown bear. Well, unfortunately, we didn't have any issues breaking those deer down. However, when we packed those 3 deer out, Cody and I came back on the island, and my brother stayed on the boat, and him and I went, and I tried to get it on a buck that afternoon, and lo and behold, I was sitting on a point glassing, and I see this bear coming out, and I just see his nose in the air, and he covered probably 1.5 miles in less than 5 minutes through that stuff. I don't know. I don't know how they move so fast. He hit the gut pile, then he hit the next gut pile, and he hit 2 gut piles, and then he just blew out of there, and so I knew, it was real to me because that was my first experience seeing one of those Volkswagen bugs moving through that stuff.
I told you.
Just a whole different level of respect for that animal.
For those people that don't know about brown bears, they are just an incredible animal. The brown bears on Kodiak Island are some of the biggest in the world.
Next level.
And let me tell you, I was fortunate enough to hunt one, and when they reach over and grab a 12 to 14 inch round tree that's 25 plus foot tall, and they put their claws underneath it and literally pull it out of the ground just like that.
Yeah.
You get a realization of how awesome they are.
Well, and to sum up Kodiak, so we ended up all shooting deer. I ended up shooting 2 deer, but I've told the story a couple times, but the last day we're going on the island, I hadn't killed the deer yet. And it was kind of like, it was like D-Day, right? It
was like slack or get your stuff done.
To get it done, right? And we're sitting there glassing up this pretty good 3x3, and I'm contemplating, do I borrow Mike's gun and shoot this thing, or do I shoot it with my bow? I'm like, I came here to kill a buck with my bow. So anyway, lo and behold, we're sitting here looking at this buck, and all of a sudden we hear the alders crashing off to the left, and I'm thinking, okay, I think there's some deer around us. Those weren't deer. That was a Kodiak brown bear that came within 10 paces as Mike and I both were basically at full draw with my 10 millimeter and his 45, and then Cody was locked with his bow. And all I can say is the best decision he made was turn around, because it was going to get pretty ugly really quick if he'd have taken another step. So
well, and those bear, you realize that you are not the apex predator on that island.
You're not.
Those bears are absolute machines at killing stuff.
Yeah.
And they're not afraid of nothing. But a lot of times, which you guys did, hey bear, waved.
Exactly.
And they actually did move.
Yeah.
It moved away from you, which is a good sign, because, we've seen lots of times, and especially since, the bears there are hunted, so a lot of times they are afraid of humans. Unlike the Wyoming and Montana and situations that we're having up there, where a lot of people are getting mauled and or actually killed.
Yeah, it's sad. It's sad what's happening here in the States. But, those bears feed on salmon. They feed on deer. In that time of year, it's like they have plenty of feed, right?
Yeah.
So they're probably not as aggressive as the bears we're dealing with here in the States. But anyway, the only plug I'll say is if Kodiak is not on your bucket list, it has to be. You've been many times. And I will, in my lifetime, I know I will go again and hunt that island, and just a phenomenal trip. Great experience with my brother to go and do that, right? Him and I haven't done a trip like that in a long time. So
Larson Bay is a fun place to be, ain't it?
Just had a great time, and Kodiak was fun. So anyway, so yeah, let's get you back on. So Wyatt draws 2 deer tags this year.
Little spoiled brat. God, I love him.
Yeah, he's a good boy. I like him too.
You know,
I hate him, but I like him.
Yeah. The cool part is we had the Colorado deer hunt, and the beautiful side about that hunt was on my sheep hunt a few years back, I had met a guy, Kurt, who told me, hey, look, if you want to bring your kid out and go deer hunting, please bring him out. We'll get it all taken care of. So I threw my kid in for an area that's really not known to be very difficult. Lots of people hunting it. And lo and behold, he draws the tag. So we were at what they call second rifle season, which is really the first time that you could use a rifle.
Correct.
But the moon phase was crappy, and the weather as we started off, there was a little storm that hit just before we went. But man, according to the weather, it was going to be hot, hot, hot. And what I mean by that is, 8,000 feet, and it was going to be 70 degrees. The positive note is I had local intel, and my friend Kurt, we hooked up ahead of time. We did some scouting. I saw a couple of deer that were pretty interesting, but then opening morning, we dropped into this big burn, and we started glassing everything, and man, it was not long.
Yep.
And we started turning up bucks, and it was like one buck after another. In fact, I think we saw a total of nine legal bucks, 2 of which in my book were shooters. One was a little far. It was around 800 yards, but the buck that my son ended up killing, he spotted it. Wyatt spotted it because we were looking further away, trying to relocate this one deer that had kind of disappeared on us. And all of a sudden, Wyatt's like, hey, what about this deer right here? And I mean, it was like 412 yards. I looked down, I'm like, get on the gun. Funny part is my buddy Kurt was like, hey, that other deer, it's a pretty nice deer. When I finally got Kurt on this deer, he's like, man, I think this is probably, he had done inventory, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, he had looked over hundreds of bucks in that area. And he said the deer that we were looking at was probably, the top 3 deer in the area.
Sure.
So as that deer kind of fed away from us, I kept thinking, man, I think we should have shot that deer. But it was opening morning, But as I was looking at the weather forecast, I'm thinking, man, it's going to be miserable hot. I mean, deer are going to be out very early in the morning, very late at night. We had already heard shots. This area had plenty of tags, so we knew what was going to happen.
Sure.
It was going to get really crazy. Deer were going to start getting a little freaked out, and then surprise, surprise, they'd all disappear. Well, lo and behold, that deer went and bedded up next to another buck that we had spotted, and we could actually see him from where we were glassing from. So, he was turning and looking, and as he turned one time, I saw an extra point on him. And when I saw that extra point, that was his downfall. He had great eye guards. He was really symmetrical, but he had one little extra point.
Nice deer.
And so we put a stalk on him, got within 300 yards of him, and he was bedded down right underneath a big old boulder. That was beautiful. I mean, the funny part is my boy, of course, got a little wound up, and he couldn't keep his gun steady, and he couldn't prone out because we were in sagebrush.
I don't blame him.
And
I probably would have got a little wobbly too. I'm looking at that deer.
He sent one wildly, but then as the deer was walking away, I said, "You got to hit him." And he put a hole in him, and then the deer turned sideways and was kind of stumbling. And actually, that third shot was just spot on. I mean, that deer didn't go anywhere.
That's awesome. So, yeah, Colorado was good for you guys.
Colorado was fantastic. It was crazy because it was like drive 2 days, spend 2 days scouting, spend all of, 2.5 hours hunting.
That's okay,
And then
right?
spend the rest of
There's
the day.
nothing wrong with that.
That's what I thought, but my son was like, man, Dad, we took all this time off and,
You spend a couple days and glass a few, but then you realize, okay, I'm glad I shot that buck because I haven't seen anyone bigger than that one, right?
That's true. Actually, we didn't hardly see anything better than that after that. So and then that rolls us back. We came back to California for a couple of weeks, and then he had that late youth New Mexico deer tag, which, of course, I had, hunting mule deer in December. You get to experience that because of going to Montana.
Yeah, Thanksgiving, late November, but still, that's the peak of the rut that time.
I just had this dreams of 180 class bucks bouncing all over the place.
Yeah.
And oh my God, this is going to be a slam dunk hunt. It was in Unit 10, for those that don't know. That's out of Gallup. Got over there. We actually scheduled. The youth tags are weird from my standpoint. They only let the kids hunt on the weekends because they don't want them skipping school. I like to always hunt the weekdays. So
yeah, not as much traffic. And
we went early. I figured 2-3 days. 4 days of scouting ahead of time, and I knew we were going to have multiple bucks figured out. Well, the first day I got there, I glassed a whole bunch of area. I didn't even see a deer. The second day, I ended up seeing, I think, a total out of the whole day, I saw 27 does. Not one buck.
In December.
27
does should have a buck pushing them in December.
The third day,
one would think.
The weather dropped, a front came in, and I'm like, it's going to snow all day. I think I saw another 15 does and one little buck. I was just disheartened. I mean, Now, here's the kicker. Saw hundreds of elk. Hundreds and hundreds of elk. Saw one 340 class bull 3 different times in the exact same spot. Every time I pulled up to this place to glass for deer, I was like, well, I got to look in this one little cut to see if the bull's there. Yep, he's there. Okay, stop looking at him. Move on. We don't have an elk tag. Ended up, dumping 8 inches of snow just before the day that we could hunt, which was December 8th. I was like, okay, this is a no-brainer.
Yeah.
I'm going to be able to find a big old buck. We glassed all morning. We got fogged in. Once we got fogged in, I decided, hey, you know what? I'm just going to drive the roads. It's fresh snow. We were the first people on the mountain. I said, all we got to do is find a buck track crossing the road. We'll follow him. We'll kill him. I did not cut one buck track in like 4 hours of driving in fresh snow all over this mountain that I thought would be a slam dunk. It was tough. And we did end up, I spotted a deer up on a grassy knoll that the whole rest of the mountain was covered with snow. Found this one deer up on this grassy knoll, and I told myself, there's got to be a buck with that doe. The Sunday morning we went back, hiked into this area. It was a crappy spot. And I just knew. I said, there's going to be a big old buck with this doe. It's in that type of a place that just, nobody else is going there. And we got all set up. And right at about 8:45, this doe pops over this ridge right onto this grassy knoll, starts chewing on this piece of sagebrush. And I'm like, it is going to happen. There's going to be a buck. And this little 20-inch 4x4 walked over, lip curling, sniffing her and walking around. And I thought, what? This is wrong.
Yeah.
And then the worst part, I looked at my son. I thought, oh my God, he's probably going to want to kill this thing. And then it's going to be 2 days getting this deer out of here. Kind of one of those Goodale scenarios. Yep. Shoot them in the back country and then spend the rest of your time getting them out. Sure. And he looked at me and he goes, man, Dad, that's kind of small. I was thinking, oh, thank God, I think he's got sense. And we also had 8 hours more of hunting left. So we packed out of there and went and looked, but we ended up not seeing another legal buck after that. So I know everybody tells me that the genetics there and that, that there's big deer there, but man, we
just didn't see them, huh?
We spent
2 days.
We spent 6 days of hard scouting and cutting and looking and glassing and doing what we normally do that turns results. just did not work out.
Yeah.
So
that happens, right? I mean, I didn't punch my tag in New Mexico, so not that that was the curse, but
back to that
New
Mexico.
Can happen.
You know, I think you and I are going to have to apply for New Mexico this coming year,
think
just
we're
so
gonna
we
have
can
to.
kill something.
I think we're going to have to
say that we actually did it.
Get back at New Mexico. Yeah, so then the last hunt of the year, at least for me, is I went back to Montana, and I always do a Thanksgiving hunt with my brother and family, and I had one day to hunt elk, and fortunately was able to get out with my buddies, and I shot a good cow, so I got a cow elk.
I love the photograph of the teeth and the date.
That
was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I got the tag notched. I got the ivories, and then I just shot a dinosaur of a cow. She was just an old, big brute of a cow, but probably will taste like leather. I've ate a little of her. She's not too bad. So
you know, elk hamburger is the best.
There's no bad elk. And then spent the last few days of the week before Thanksgiving hunting deer with my brother, and we had a ball together, just him and I, out, just pushing rut and mule deer, and we actually ended up getting him a pretty nice little 4x4 whitetail buck down on the Milk River Valley. So it just worked out well, and I wasn't over ecstatic about filling my deer tag because I'd already shot an elk. I had this elk in the freezer in my truck, so I was like, well, I don't really need a deer. So anyway, so it was good. It was a really good trip. So anyway, that sums up 18. So real quick, 2019. I mean, what do you got on the radar? It's going to be here in what 10 days, 11 days, right?
It's amazing how this year has blown by, and already thinking about next year. I mean, you and I are going to need to talk. We had talked about potentially a Colorado elk hunt together.
Combo. We got points to do that.
It's really going to depend on, I think, the first tags out is Arizona elk.
Exactly. And then Wyoming.
I dream about Arizona elk every year.
I know.
My big thing is I really want to draw my Colorado goat tag, which I think I probably can do. And if that happens, then that kind of puts everything else kind of on notice.
Sure.
So I'd like to do an elk
priority.
I'd like to do an elk hunt because you could always archery elk hunt, and then probably do the goat hunt. And then after that, it's see what you
draw, right?
Yeah,
the kids
see what the kids hit.
Yeah.
But that's really everything on my list. Of course, I've been asked to go to New Zealand, and it's on my list. But as you know, I'm trying to move to Arizona.
Yeah, you slug. You're leaving me.
Well,
to some extent, but
I love you, man. But the reality is that you could come visit me at this time of year next year. Hopefully, I'll be a resident.
Then we can go deer hunting.
We could go deer hunting.
Yeah,
You know? Now that
sounds like a good idea.
Arizona, Christmas in Arizona. I mean, come on.
I could probably do that. That could be my new tradition.
I'm just saying, Mom, Dad, brother, you're invited to come to Arizona for Christmas.
Yeah. So 2019. I mean, we're going to try to hit a few trade shows, hopefully, if time permitting and schedule works, and then. Basically typical, I'll be, doing turkey hunting, pig hunts. I got my guide license now, so I'm going to try to get a little more business this year doing that. Took an elk hunter out this year, so that was fun. But the only thing I really have on the books right now is that moose hunt that I booked with my buddy Cody in Antioch.
You guys are freaking nuts.
I know. We're going to go with our bows and try to shoot 2 moose within 15 days, but we'll see how that goes. But yes, that's for next year. That's the only thing that I've paid for already on the books. Just got to get my plane ticket. And other than that, I'll probably draw a few tags. I'll get a Montana elk and deer tag, and maybe get dumb lucky and draw an Arizona tag or maybe another New Mexico tag. We'll see. But that's it. That's all. That's the only thing on the plate. So
you got to put your name in the hat in order to have a chance.
Yeah.
And I took that on to heart 20 years ago, and now I've got enough points in a lot of places that I have to be careful. Yeah. At the same time, the cool thing is I also have points enough to, in a lot of states, share if I want to.
Yeah. Nevada's an example of that, right?
Yeah. Well, and Nevada, really, their deer, dude. I mean, come on. They have produced some absolute stomper bucks.
They have, yeah.
And, while hunting elk is almost impossible, hunting deer is a reality. I mean, it can happen.
It really is. Yep.
So, I don't know,
good stuff, man.
Wrapping up the year.
It's been a good year, and looking forward to 2019. And
It'll be another epic experience.
Yeah,
I know it.
You think about what's the new year going to bring, and it's like that's always different experiences. Even though you may go to the same place or hunt the same area, it's just going to be a completely different experience, right? And that's what I love about it.
And you're pre-warned. You know what happens if we do decide to go to Safari Club. I'm just telling you. I'm warning you right now. Shit happens there.
Well, I think
Sorry, people. I wasn't supposed to say that.
I think we need to go to Safari Club. We need to go see Alex anyway.
If we go up there and do that, I have a sneaking suspicion that we might add some more stuff to our plate that we haven't figured out how to figure out. I need like a fairy godparent, somebody that'll email me or drop me money when you go,
you just need that tree in your backyard. Then you can just grow $100 bills off of it.
I planted trees in my backyard. None of them have produced any green dollar bills or any gold coins. I don't understand it.
Well, I'm on assignment when I go to sheep in February to look for adult sheep hunt for 2020. So my brother wants to do that in 20, and I've got another guy that wants to do it. So I'm going to try to see if I can find a 4-person combo deal and see what I can get. I've got a couple outfitters I've already reached out to. So I think 2020 adult sheep could become a reality, along with potentially going back to Africa too. So, and doing that buffalo hunt that you and I talked about. So anyway, a lot of stuff planned, but you never know, right?
We'll talk about it as we start doing some shows and actually interviewing some people and doing that fun stuff.
Yep.
Who knows where the hell you'll be? You might be in Namibia chasing a mountain zebra or something crazy like that.
That's true.
So, peace out, thanks, everybody.
Man. Had a great year, 2018 in the books, and Merry Christmas to you coming up. You're going to be spending time with the family, and then next thing you know, it's going to be 2019, and we're going to be blowing and going as usual, whacking and stacking like we do. So,
yes, indeed, it will be a beautiful year. I guarantee it.
Yep. And I just want to say on behalf of RNA Outdoors, I want to thank all our listeners, all our committed listeners, all our subscribers. It's been another great year. Our podcast numbers continue to just climb and increase, and a lot of that's just due to everyone's efforts and support. And Jason, you're a big supporter, and wearing the gear and the hats and supporting the effort that we try to do. And just really appreciate what everyone's done. And we'll continue to crank out podcasts going forward. So,
and please, leave a review. Even if you say, these guys really are boring.
Yeah.
Leave something.
Leave
Come
a review.
on.
Yeah.
Tell us what we're doing. Call us. Ask us some questions. We'll figure it out. Go to Africa. Kill a whole bunch of stuff. You'll love it.
Exactly.
Peace out, man.
All right,
Till the next go around.
Sounds good.
Ciao.
Ciao. Hey everyone, this is Lucas Paw, host of the RNA Outdoors podcast. Please check out Podbean and iTunes. If you have an iPhone or iPad, go to the podcast app on your device, search for RNA Outdoors, and hit the purple subscribe button. When doing this, it will automatically upload when new podcasts are loaded, and they will download into your queue. For Android users, you can access the podcast through Podbean, Stitcher, or use our website, www.rnaoutdoors.com/podcast. In addition, under the RNA Outdoors podcast channel, please leave a review and a 5-star rating. These reviews help boost our popularity and outreach. You can also follow us on our social media outlets, Twitter at RNA Outdoors, Facebook, RNA Outdoors, and Instagram, Rod and Arrow Outdoors. All links are in the show notes as well. If you like what you've heard, we hope you'll pass along our channel to your friends and colleagues. Keep up the good fight. We cannot sit by and watch the public lands devoted to wildlife protection wither away. There's simply too much at stake. Make your voice heard, speak up, and get involved with conservation efforts, and know that every little bit helps. As we say on the mountain, go farther, stay longer.